Thank you so very much for staying with us here on the Friday edition of News Talk. Bruce DePoit with you today. President Obama's efforts to get Congress to approve the Iranian nuclear deal suffered a blow when an influential Democrat, New York Senator Chuck Schumer, came out against it. Mr. Obama is pushing lawmakers hard on the matter. If you were with us here yesterday, you heard former Congressman Jim Moran say he thinks the votes are not yet there. This is the first of several issues we'll touch on today with Eleanor Holmes Norton, a Democrat. She represents the district in the U.S. House. Welcome back. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Bruce.
This is a passionate, this is a big, high-stakes issue about which people on both sides feel passionately. Give us your thoughts, if you would, on the proposal to allow Tehran to keep its nuclear program, but the hope being that they will use it only for energy purposes.
And it's not a hope, but I understand the concern. What I don't understand is the concern of those, particularly Democrats, who have, if you'll forgive me, defected and left the president there. Not only the president, but the entire world, because imagine how isolated we will be if after all is said and done, everyone was for it except the United States. Now, what's happening, Bruce, is the discussion is not about the deal. It's about something that wasn't on the table, and that is the behavior of Iran in the world and what they will do when they get hold of $100 million. Actually, they have shown themselves very resilient without that money in spreading their horrific chaos, frankly. Let's think about it. First of all, in a real sense, even the Arab world seems to be united against ISIL. So ISIL has become kind of the common enemy of everybody: Israel, Egypt, all the Syria, all the so-called adversaries. But is it fair to essentially torpedo a deal because you're putting another issue on the table, not the issue that presidents before President Obama have been negotiating? And is it fair when they use issues which are clearly bogus? For example, time and again I hear, well, they have 24 days, they can move all the nuclear stuff. Well, of course you can't, because you can't dispose of nuclear material, uranium, within 24 days simply by moving it, because it leaves the residue. And to have to answer that question over and over again is problematic, because they keep putting it out. So I do think that we will have difficulty, particularly when you consider that Schumer is a leader in the Senate with Democrats. I do not think that there will be any difficulty overriding the veto, and I do think that everybody ought to look at Nancy Pelosi, who knows what she is doing. We are the minority, but it is Nancy who will hold together the Democrats, who will keep override from occurring.
Many critics of the deal believe that it's essential. You have to make sure that the nuclear program that Iran has developed so far poses zero, or as close to zero as you can humanly get, to Iran's neighbors in the region, particularly Israel. And one of your Republican colleagues in the House said this week that the way to do that is to bomb them back to day zero. Is that hyperbole, or is that the actual view of some elected leaders in this country?
I mean, that is the hyperbole that we now hear, that even the most conservative Republicans are not prepared to act on. Look what
Then why say it? I mean, if we're having a serious debate about a serious about a super serious topic, why engage? Why make that part of the?
Well, it tells you everything about this era. That when it comes to matters of this seriousness, you have always had Republicans that wanted to have a real discussion. This is the first time I've seen wholesale defection virtually before the agreement was finished against the agreement. That is the kind of hyper-partisanship we're having here. Something that is too seldom discussed is that, first of all, there are some who wanted simply to humiliate Iran. Yeah, you don't sit across the table and humiliate people. Iran has a right to uranium for nuclear for peaceful purposes. They will be left with that right. Guess what? Then the IEA, the international organization, will be able to monitor that peaceful use if that's what they want to do. I have not heard a good argument, a sound argument for rejecting this deal. I have heard a lot of good arguments for what will happen to the United States if you were able to get China and Russia on the same deal with all of us. You are going to see all kinds of trade of the kind that we wish wouldn't happen, that isn't happening now. If we go off this deal between Russia, China, and Iran, and you are going to see the United States of America completely isolated, as we were at the time of the Iraq War.
How much of the debate did you watch last night, and what struck you most about it?
I watched the whole thing. It was candidly very entertaining, and it allowed me to see who was serious and who was not, who could speak conversationally, who was speaking from talking points. And let me tell you, I mean, it's a good thing I'm not a pundit, because I think Donald Trump imploded. I think imploded from the moment he said he would not support the Republican candidate and kind of tried to hedge it at the same time.
And, you know, I'm glad you brought that up. We somehow didn't touch on that moment, that very big moment in our earlier discussion. A member of the Trump organization, I want to say Michael Cohen, I might have the name wrong, he was interviewed by phone by CNN not that long ago, and he said, we all know that if Donald Trump runs as a third party or an independent candidate, Hillary Clinton wins. A high-level official of the Trump organization said that. So for Trump then to go on TV and say, I will not support the nominee regardless of who it is, that's huge.
Well, it's huge, and it tells you he's acting like a, quote, politician, because he said at the same time, or he said this morning, you know, I need leverage. In other words, he's both saying this is what I'm going to do. He says politicians tell you they're going to do something and then they don't do it. He ain't going to run, and he knows he's not going to run. His other questions were answered. I thought one question showed how poor a sport he is and how unprepared he is when he attacked the female reporter for asking him a hard question. That essentially was what the attack was about. And I don't really like what you did, and I could go after you, but I'm not going to do it. What kind of way is that to talk to the press? They can get you.
And women are listening. That's the thing. Women are listening, so this all matters. Congresswoman, stand by for just a moment. We'll continue our conversation with Eleanor Holmes Norton here on News Channel 8 right after the break, and of course online too, as always, at news8newstalk.com. We'll be right back. Before the hour, continuing our conversation here on News Talk with D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton. A moment in the push for D.C. statehood this week as John Oliver does a 17-minute takedown of every criticism statehood foes would present. That said, this is a historically heavy lift. Can you, and if so how, leverage a really well done and funny and spot-on video that's now been seen by millions to create progress, serious momentum?
This is the serious question before the District of Columbia, its public officials, the statehood movement, and all of us. If we can't take this with so many parts that can be used, with social media out there waiting for us to do it, then we never will. Now, this is the best thing that's happened since Colbert used to have me on to make fun of D.C. and me, and people saw it all over the country and would stop in my office. This is a brilliant, compacted segment. They called me ahead of time. They asked me about issues. I said, oh, it's going to be hard to make fun of that, like abortion. They managed to do it. It was brilliant. It was hilarious. Now, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a briefing of members of Congress and staff. They'll be mostly staff and members of the public when we get back. I'm going to have a guest who's an expert on statehood. I'm going to use it for as much as I can. But there are, who the challenge is to the statehood movement. It's very interesting. You remember the sledding children? The sledding parents put out a release just yesterday that they were gathering in front of the Capitol on Sunday at 10 a.m. to sing that last song that the kids sang, the 50 States song, Give D.C. their weed, their whatever. They are going to gather to do it, and they said something very important in their release. They said, you know, as brilliant as Oliver was, it's up to us. The real challenge is to D.C., its public officials, and its residents. Can you take this gift you weren't asked for, this gift you didn't expect, and make the most of it, because you'll never be able to get advertisements and pay for it on TV like that again.
Especially since the foundation of the whole thing arguably is education. People can't sort of support an effort to end injustice if they don't know about the injustice in the first place.
Beginning with not knowing that we don't have the same rights everybody in the first place. That's the most frustrating part. What he tells people is, what? But, you know, I see a congresswoman there. She talks on the floor sometimes. He's telling people what they don't know. He dropped some factoids that I love that I'm sure people don't know, even people living in the district. That the district has a gross product greater than that of 16 states. What are you going to do with that when people don't have the vote? Well,
the 51 state flag, the 51 star flag. There were so many of those moments. It was well done. Spend the last minute that we have talking about your job fair, if you would.
Yeah, people look for it every year. They stop me in the street. It's going to be Friday the 21st at the convention center, 10 to 3 o'clock. You can see every important employer from across the region, every sector, federal, state, private. People want a job, people want to change a job, people looking for a job. 10 to 3, Friday the 21st.
Bring your resume.
People usually require them online, but
Gotcha.
This is what you got. The first opportunity, perhaps the only opportunity we have in this day and age to have eye-shot conversation with a real with an employer.
For district residents. This is for district residents.
Otherwise, we'd be flooded.
So it's a couple of Fridays from now, 10 a.m. to 3 a.m. Convention Center.
Precisely.
Real employers with real jobs.
Under one roof.
All right. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, always great having you here.
Terrific.
Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. We're back with the program note right after this.